So welcome to the next in our online messages brought to you by the folks at the Raleigh Congregational Church in Raleigh, Massachusetts. This is Reverend Tom Bentley, the pastor. We hope that these messages can help you in your journey in life and faith, and hopefully help us together enter this new year of 2021 with hope and affirmation. If you'd like to know more about the ministry and work of the Raleigh Congregational Church, there will be a little information for you at the end of this video. So again, peace and best wishes in your journey. Grace to you and peace from God our Creator and our friend Jesus. 2020 has come to an end, and so has the Christmas season, and Christendom draws on suggested readings, which for the message today is the Gospel of Luke in the 2nd chapter, beginning at the 22nd verse. It's about when Mary and Joseph bring Jesus to the temple to be circumcised. And there in the temple are two rather odd people who have something to say about the event. A little bit about the temple. The temple was a place where everybody went to do their business, to congregate in the Holy of Holies, where the priests did their rites and rituals. That's not where anybody went doing whatever, but in various layers outside that central core of the temple, people would congregate, and poor people would go there to beg and struggle, and the offcasts of society were there. Jesus was brought, like any male at the time, for this ritual dedication and circumcision. And there's Mary and Joseph, and they encounter in the ritual there is a man Simeon and a prophetess Anna, and their yearning was that they wanted to be relieved of the suffering, and as those in this prophetic office that they felt called to be in, though they were poor and we don't know anything about them other than Anna had been a widow for decades and had been struggling and just begging in the temple. And Simeon was clearly a voice of the prophet. They were yearning for release from the captivity of Israel. Israel, a little history, the Maccabees had broken off and given Israel a brief rush of freedom of occupying powers from about 167 BCE up to 37 BCE, which was only a few decades before the birth of Jesus. And the Hebrews had been a fully independent kingdom for most of that period of time. Judas Maccabeus, the hammer, had been the first conqueror to liberate Israel, and then things slid back into being occupied, and by the time we have the life of Jesus, the Romans are occupying. Simeon sees the child. He's been waiting. He's an ancient old fellow. God, you can now release your servant. Release me in peace as you promised. With my own eyes, I've seen your salvation. It's now out in the open for everyone to see, as God revealing light to the non-Jewish nations and of glory for your people Israel. This child marks both the failure and the recovery of many in Israel, a figure misunderstood and contradicted. The pain of a sword thrust through you, but the rejection will force honesty as God reveals who they really are. He's speaking to Mary. There's going to be a sword thrust through her heart. Something awful is going to happen here, but this is a day of reckoning in the eyes of this prophet. This is the moment of liberation for Israel that will be resisted by all the powers of the world. We're all caught up in oppression, and we're all caught up in depravity. And like Simeon at the temple, we want to see someone get us out of this mess. we feel put upon. Perhaps we think of the golden age of previous periods of greater freedom and wisdom. This is a universal struggle. When we reject the love that comes through God, this rejection, Simeon tells us, will force an honesty, and God will reveal who we really are. I've never seen a time rejecting the love of God more than right now, at least in my lifetime. I'm sure there's been worse times, but there's something uniquely threatening about what's happening now, because it isn't simply little nation states struggling for a brief period of control. It's our whole human family is at risk, and the oppression that's upon us is deadly and will be our undoing unless we respond, unless we move in the direction of the honesty that God calls us to have. This coming year of 2021 is the first in the coming years when we're going to be confronted with the cost of our painful dishonesty about how love needs to make us a real human community. Anna, when she saw this child, she broke into a praising anthem, which we don't have recorded, but she said, this is the person who we're waiting for. This is a person we can see can free Jerusalem of the bondage. Jerusalem is not really a geographic place. It's a place of holiness that is bound up by the corruption that we tend to follow. I'm not talking about Jerusalem being the center of the holy conversation. Wherever we stand as human beings, that's a holy center that needs to be absented of the cruelty and the corruption that we tend to embrace. We're not bad people. This devil's bargain of allowing ourselves to be controlled by a power rather than pursue God's instruction to be all loving. The bad news is eventually its corruption grows till we become increasingly victimized and isolated one from the other. Am I describing a time we're in now? I think so. The good news is that the love of God can liberate us, does liberate us. We'll never be absent of sin. We'll never be perfect. But can we have the words of Simeon ring through our hearts? May we know that we can see a God-revealing light to the non-Jewish nations, and a glory, a brightness to our human family that seems caught up in darkness and cruelty. So in the spirit of that invitation for Christmas, I know it's difficult to reference our human tendencies, and I could identify them in a long laundry list of stupid activities. That's not necessary. We need to understand that sin is a bondage that goes beyond our own personal predispositions and activities. It's a corporate and collective oppression, which is critical that we grapple with now and break out of. And we see it in the racism in our society. We see it in the inequity where the poor are just growing in number, where at this time of the pandemic, the breakdown of social order is clear because so many people are disproportionately hit by this disease, and they tend to be poor and of color. And the rest of the world will suffer even greatly during this time, more so even than our affluent place that we live in, this United States. Never before has there needed to be the love of God come in Jesus Christ in the hearts of all of us. That's always the invitation. That's always the prophetic moment. To celebrate that that love is there. To know that that love can change and guide us. And indeed that it is changing us and guiding us. And great souls will rise up like Anna and Simeon and do their job in the temple of humanity, and God will be present and we will prevail. I do believe that, but it ain't going to be easy. So take on this love promised in Jesus, however it can change your life. And in that love, you'll be able to find a new honesty, seeing how you've rejected before, what the love of God can do in your life. Embrace it. Honesty is painful, but ultimately it's the source of redemption. In Jesus' name, Happy New Year. Goodbye. So thank you for spending time with us. If you'd like to know more about the First Congregational Church of Rowley, you can go online at firstchurchrowley.org. If you'd like to send a gift to help with the ministry, you can do so by doing that online, or you can send that gift to 175 Main Street, P.O. Box 364, Rowley, Massachusetts 01969. And of course, we'd always love to hear from you. Please feel free to call us anytime at 978-948-3993. So again, peace and best wishes in your journey. Goodbye.